So all my life, I've been into health and fitness. It's just been a passion of mine because I had the parents that would put me into every sport possible at a young age. So I did soccer, did swimming, I did karate, I did figure skating, I did dance. But I never excelled at those things the way I would have liked to, except for dance and figure skating. And one thing those two, I'm going to call them sports, even though you may not classify dance as a sport, have in common is that they both focus on the movement of the body. People have, the way they judge it is based off how you look and how you move throughout the performances, with the ideal look of the body. So at a very young age, I had to be aware of nutrition and health to keep this ideal look the industries had. So while figure skating and dancing, all these people were like twigs. They had this ideal look. So I had to make sure I was following those guidelines too. So nutrition is something we all look at, and it's how we digest food, it's what we consume and what we put into our bodies and take care of our bodies. So I did projects, I did research, and then over time, I also looked at the problems that happen long term if we don't take care of our health. And it never really hit me until I had a conversation with my friend, and he came up to me and he said, "You should be happy. My family's eating healthy now." And I was like, okay, yeah, great, but why the sudden change? He said that his dad had a heart attack, so the doctor advised him to go on a low sodium diet. Who here knows someone that's had a heart attack before? Now think about it. How did that impact you? How did you feel? Sad? I heard sad. Was it scary? Did you feel anxious? Were you worried? Because notice that heart attack, even though you weren't the one getting the heart attack, you were impacted by it. Long-term diseases and problems don't just impact the individual, but impact the loved ones around them, the community around them. So the problem is we wait for such a traumatic event, for like a heart attack, in order for us to make a change. But one of the public health problems that are happening nowadays is diabetes. This is a growing cause, and as of 2017, 2.3 million people in Canada were diagnosed with diabetes. But those were the only ones that were diagnosed. The problem is type 2 diabetes especially. They have such minor symptoms that people don't even notice them, and they can go untreated for long terms. And it's important to realize that diabetes is not the end result. It is just the start to much more difficult problems you're going to have later on in life. So where it all starts is by the foods we consume. What did you guys eat for lunch? Okay, so if it was fast food, boxed, was frozen, basically anything pre-made, that's what I call processed foods. These foods are high in fats, oils, and sugars, which makes them calorie compact, but also lack in nutrients, which means they're empty calories. Empty calories means you're not going to be full, you're not going to be satisfied, and you're not going to have what your body needs in order to function throughout the day. So then it's also calorie compact, so you're putting all this energy in, and it's not doing anything for you. So if I go back to the sugar aspect of it, when we consume food, our glucose levels, glucose is a transferable word to sugar. So if I say glucose, or if I say sugar, same thing. So I'll say sugar to make it easier. So we have sugar levels in the body, blood sugar levels. And when we consume food, our sugar levels go up. When we don't consume food, sugar levels go down. But But the problem is these processed foods have so much sugar in them, they're skyrocketing our sugar levels to an unhealthy amount. And so what our body does is create insulin. Insulin, you can think of it as a key. So the glucose, the sugar in the body, is distributed throughout the bloodstream to all the cells. What insulin does, it acts as a key to unlock the cell, to allow the sugar into the cell to be used as energy. That's why you have a spark of energy after you eat. But the problem is these processed foods also contain too much sugar. So the excess sugar that can't be put into the cell gets distributed to the largest organ in the body, which is the muscle tissue. And from there, it's stored as fat. When there's too much fat in the body, it affects other hormones in the body. So one hormone that lies within the fat of the body is called leptin. Leptin signals your brain as to how much energy is in the body. So if there's a lack of energy, it'll tell you to eat. If there's too much energy, it'll tell you to stop eating. So the problem is when there's too much fat in the body, leptin has a harder time signaling the brain the correct information. So if you can't tell when to eat and when not to eat, what are you going to do? You're going to overeat because you're not going to know. And when you overeat, that causes even more problems because you're usually leads to weight gain, and that then stores more fat in the body. And when there's more fat in the body, it will affect that key I was talking about, insulin. Because insulin becomes less sensitive when there's more fat in the body, meaning it has a harder time being produced. So if we go back to the key, if there's no key, how is that sugar going to how is that sugar going to get into the cell to be used as energy? It's not. And also, if the key isn't working along with the cell, the sugar is still not going to get into the cell. This is called insulin resistance. And this is what many people with type 2 diabetes have. It is just the start of long-term problems. And eventually, your body will realize, since I'm not using this insulin, why produce it? So your body then stops producing insulin, and you're going to have to take insulin shots every day. Who here is scared of needles or hates needles? Okay. So you think of that now, but if you are diabetic and you have insulin resistance, you're going to have to inject yourself with needles with insulin every day. And you're going to have to be constantly checking sugar levels after every meal to make sure your sugar levels aren't too high. But insulin doesn't just affect the glucose levels in the body. It also, so insulin itself affects either directly or indirectly almost every part of the body. So one thing it also does, when there's a lack of it, it promotes high cholesterol. High cholesterol is when the arteries and the blood vessels of the body are then narrowed because of a buildup within. When this buildup happens, the chances of blood being able to go through and getting clogged, like a clog can happen, meaning it gets stuck, it can't go through properly. Same with oxygen. So say your heart, one of the arteries to your heart, it gets clogged. Blood can't get to it. That's called a heart attack. That is what my friend's father had. Also, things such as strokes, the same concept can happen. If an artery is blocked off towards the brain, that part of the brain will no longer function. And whatever that part of the brain was responsible for will no longer function either. So that's why people, when they have strokes, they're half paralyzed. Part of them is paralyzed. And it's important to realize that diabetes isn't cured, it's treated. We can find ways to adapt and help us like reverse the symptoms, reverse these problems, but there's no way to really cure it as of right now. So paying attention to what you consume and what you do is very important. So how we can adjust from this is by eating more natural foods in our diet, such as fruits and vegetables. I can't stress this enough. Fruits and vegetables are just natural food. They have natural sugars. They break down in your body so much slower and at a more gradual pace. You won't have this rush of sugar. It's so much better on the body. And then also, like white rice, per se, that breaks down in your body so fast, you get a spike of energy, but then you feel drained right after. And then you're left hungry. Well, if we change that and we switch it for more whole wheat foods, such as whole wheat or brown rice or anything like that, we're able to break those down slower in the body, leaving you with more energy for a longer period of time. You'll feel full longer, and you'll have some nutrients from it. And exercise. Exercise is really important, at least 1 hour a day. It doesn't even have to be difficult exercise, it's just enough to keep the body moving. Because, as I said before, insulin becomes less sensitive to more fat in the body. So the more we lose fat, the more sensitive insulin will become, that key, and it will allow the cells to use the glucose as energy. And also because exercise is a natural way to lower glucose levels. So if you're diabetic, most of people have to do exercise rather than taking those insulin shots like 8 times a day. So if I'm going to leave you with anything today, it's that every choice you make, whether it's food, something you do, it impacts you long term or sooner than you think. You don't really know, so I recommend to, when next time you eat a meal or make a decision, think, will this impact my future in a positive way, or will this satisfy me right now? Thank you.